Okay, let's start with our pattern pieces. So all of our pattern pieces for the collar will have markings on them. Do not skip putting these markings on your pieces. Just make sure that you use some sort of a washable tracing marker or a tracing paper with a tracing wheel, something to transfer these markings from your pattern to the fabric because they will come in handy. So our first pattern piece is the left collar. You'll see that we have 3 pleat markings on this piece. And then we have our right collar that has 3 pleat markings along with 2 buttonholes. And then we have our back collar piece, which has these 2 drill holes on it. And you will need to have those drill holes for the construction. Then we have our back bodice piece. You'll notice that we have notches on the back of the neckline and then on both of the bases of the arm side. And then finally we have our front bodice piece, which also has notches on the neckline and on the arm side. So the first thing we're going to do is take our left collar over to the ironing board and fold over on the pleat markings like this. Now you don't have to iron these if you don't want to. If you don't want a really sharp crease on your collar, you absolutely don't have to press this. I just like how it looks for mine, and I like the control that it gives me at this step. So I'm gonna go ahead and press this with my iron with some steam, and then I'll go ahead and use my tailor's clapper to really keep it in place. But those 3 lines are going to overlap like this. You'll take the 2 on the outsides, match them up, and then the fold line will be on that center marking that you created before. Once you have your pleat pressed or not pressed, you will just go ahead and grab yourself some pins and put the pleat, keep the pleat in place with your pins. So I like 2 at the top where it's nice and wide, and then I'm just gonna put 1 down here towards the bottom so that it keeps the narrow side of the pleat together. Now we're gonna flip it over, and this part you do need to press. It isn't something that you can skip. Fold it in half so that the wrong sides are together, and grab your iron and give it a really good steam press. Use your tailor's clapper if you have it, because you want a really nice crease at this point here so that we can align our pattern pieces together around the collar evenly. And when I open it up here, you'll see that we've got that nice crease going right down the middle. That's going to make it really helpful. So I'm just going to keep this folded and set it to the side. Now we're going to repeat everything that we did with our right collar. So we have our pleat markings here, and then we're going to match up this outside pleat marking with the inside pleat line. And once again, if you don't want to press it, you don't have to. I like to, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. It is going to give you a little bit more control over that pleat while you do your construction. So maybe you do it for your first one, and then if you want a more relaxed look, you can just skip it for the next one, or honestly, you can just skip it from the beginning here. It's all up to you. Or you can just press it out when you're done. Then I'm going to pin my pleat together. If you don't want to do pins and you'd rather do a basting stitch, you're welcome to do that as well. But I'm going to put my 2 at the top and then one at the bottom here. Then we'll go ahead and flip this piece over just like the left collar and create our crease for the fold line, creating our collar facing. Once again, please make sure that you use a lot of steam and your clapper if you have one, because having this crease nice and crisp is going to make it a lot easier when you are putting these all together. Now the back collar piece is super easy. All we have to do is fold this in half so that the wrong sides are together and create our crease like we did with the right and the left collar. So just make sure your notches are matched up nicely, and then go ahead and give it a good steam press. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start putting this collar together. We have our drill markings on the back collar piece. Now I want you to notice that our left collar has the wide side of the pleat on top right now. You'll see my 2 pins up at the top. So this is the side that we are lining up with the drill marking. So this base of the V here on the left collar is going to be aligned with the drill marking. You can even put it just slightly above the drill marking, like I have right here. Then grab a pin and pin them together. You'll notice that those creases we made, those folding creases, are aligned at this point. Now flip it over so that your back collar piece is on top, and grab the sides and match them up, just like this. Don't worry about the excess right now in the middle. We're going to resolve that in just a moment. So first, get these sides, make sure they are even along the edges, and pin them together. Then we're going to flip it over again. So now our left collar piece is on top again. And we're going to use a little trick to make this easy to pin together. So use your finger, stretch it across the length of the top of your collar here, just like this, so that you can see where the fabric easily wants to match up. And then pin along this side until you get to the middle of that back collar piece. See, I didn't go all the way down yet. I just went to that center point of the back collar piece. Now we're going to repeat this with the other side. I stretch my finger across the back here so that the fabric is not being pulled, it's not being stretched. We're just laying it out evenly next to one another and pinning them together. And this is going to create a little bit of like a slit on your left collar piece. So this is what it looks like at this point. If I were to stick my finger through, this is the easiest way to show where you're going to be sewing. Just holding your finger like this. And then you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew right along the top here, going from this edge down to the drill marking at the point of the V, and then back up onto the other side. So when you go to sew it, just follow along that top edge down the V of the left collar piece down to the drill marking. And once you get to the drill marking, you're going to drop your needle, raise your presser foot, and pivot the fabric, and then follow it back along that V there from the drill marking, back along the other side up into the end. Make sure to backstitch. These are construction seams, so you want to make sure they're nice and secure. So we have our left collar piece at the bottom here. We have the other drill marking at the top of the back collar piece. Now grab your right collar piece. We have the buttons at the bottom here. Flip it over so that the wrong side is facing up. We have the wide end of the pleat at the top. Once again, match up the base of that V just above the drill marking and pin those together right at that fold line that we created our crease for. Then flip it over, grab our top edges here and match them along with the top edges of the back collar piece. Then flip it over again, and we are going to do the same thing we did before. Use our finger to really match up the fabric on these edges here so that there's no stretching involved. And then just pin everything together to the V on that back collar. Using your finger this way really makes a huge difference in getting the fabric to align correctly. It's just not nearly as easy if you don't, I promise. Go along to the other side, do the same thing. Once again, kind of poke your finger through there to get the fabric to behave the way you want it to. And then sew from the top edge down to the drill marking and pivot back up to the other side. Now you should have your collar all together. The 3 pieces should be matched up, and we're going to attach our buttons at the buttonhole locations. I have these buttons here. We're only going to sew them through this top layer. You do not want to sew it all the way through so that it's sticking through on this back piece here, the facing. We only want it going through the front side so that you aren't getting that raw thread on the inside of the collar. Now we're going to go ahead and base stitch all the way around the edges of the collar so that everything stays in place. We have our basting stitch on, and now we're going to create our V. So start by laying the side without buttons underneath the side with buttons, and make sure that the raw edges of the collar are all matched up with one another. Now we're going to pin the tip of our V. We want to create a little basting stitch at the tip of the V. It should extend about 2 inches on both sides of the V, and this is going to keep it in place as we attach it to the bodice. Then go ahead and set it aside once you've done that. I have my bodice already constructed up to this point. I like to save a little time and do my side seams at the same time as my shoulder seams, but you are welcome to leave your side seams open if to make your collar construction a little bit simpler. I have also stay stitched at the point of the V here, just about 1 inch up on each side. Please do not skip this. It will keep your V nice and crisp. You really don't want it to get rounded as you're sewing this together. Now grab yourself some scissors, and we're just going to make a little snip here at the point of the V down to our stay stitches. And do not cut into the stitches, just end it right at the edge of them. Now grab your collar, have it so the right sides are up, the button side is up, and the basting stitch you made on the tip of your collar is going to match up with your stay stitches on the bodice. So stick it inside of the bodice and match up those stitches at the point of the V's. Then grab a pin and pin it straight through at this point. Don't stick it back through on the other side, just let it stick straight through. This is going to make it really easy to pivot your collar from one side to the other side. Now reach inside of the bodice and pivot that collar to the right and match up all of your raw edges, and go ahead and pin about 2 inches away from that pivoting point. You really use a handful of pins if you need to. You have a lot of layers you're going through. Please make sure that you grab all layers of your collar as you're doing this, and that they are all matched up evenly on that raw edge here. So pinning out about 2 inches away from the pivoting point. Now we're going to go ahead and pin it towards, or pivot it towards the other side here. So resecure that pivoting pin if you need to, like I have to right now. And then pivot your V out to the other side, and once again pin it into place about 2 inches away from the point. You're going to get this little bit of bunching at the center of the V. It's because it's a V-neck that's not in the round. It's not curved at the tip there. So don't be concerned about that. As you sew, you're not going to be sewing over any bunching. It should be flat where you sew. So we're going to go ahead and sew the tip of this V up on the side and down to the other side, making sure not to grab that little bunching part with our stitches. So this is what it looks like with that stitch done. This is a regular stitch, by the way, with some back stitching on both ends. So it's going to keep the V nice and crisp as we attach the rest of it together. At this point, we need to pin the rest of the collar to the bodice. So start by matching up your back neck notches. So you'll see I have this back neck notch on my collar and on the bodice. Go ahead and pin those first. Then move on to your shoulder seams next. And remember, you should be having right sides together when you are pinning this along this outside here. Then go to your other shoulder seam, attach that collar to the bodice. Doing these 3 points first, along with sewing the V tip, is going to help you make sure that your collar is attached evenly all the way around. And then when you get to the front part of the collar, once again, you have a lot of layers you're working with at this point, so please make sure that they get all pulled out and matched up along the raw edge. Otherwise, you could skip some layers and be really frustrated having to go back and sew those over again. So let's go ahead and go all the way around the collar, making sure to evenly pin it around the bodice neckline opening. So this is what it looks like all pinned together. Let's go ahead and sew a regular stitch with back stitching, starting from one end of our V-stitches and ending at the other. And this is what it looks like. If you haven't done your side seams yet, go ahead and finish up the side seams at this point, and then flip everything right side out, and you will have a finished collar. At this point, I would highly recommend you go back and press your seams down towards the bodice. It will make it look so much cleaner than this wrinkly, wavy mess I've got right here, and it will just give it a really beautiful finish. So great job with those pleats. I hope you are excited to finish your collar like I have finished mine. And don't forget, you can always ask questions in the Facebook group if you aren't sure of anything, and follow our YouTube channel if you need any other future video helps or tips for any of our other patterns.